Hello, 6th graders, and welcome to Chapter 7 of the 8th grade book. We are in Section 7.1, which covers square roots. Now, I know you've done square roots before. This concept is probably not new to you. However, we are going to be doing some new things with square roots. So, let's start with the basics. The basics are as follows. A square root of a number is a number that, when multiplied by itself, equals the given number. Every positive number, this is important because this is probably new for you. Every positive number has a positive and a negative square root. A perfect square is a number with integers as its square roots. So if I gave you, for example, the square root of 25, you're going to tell me that's 5. And that's nothing new. That is not a concept that's new to you. However, what you don't realize is that every time you've done the square root of a number, you've only talked about the positive square root, or the positive root value. And so that's all you've done. But there's also other things that I can give you. Like I could take the negative square root of, let's say, 25. And that's going to give me negative 5. If I take the positive or negative, so positive and negative, or plus or minus, the square root of, let's say, 25, that means that's going to give me an answer of plus or minus 5. So we have other values other than just a positive square root. So in example 1, we're going to find the square roots of a perfect square. So find the two square roots of 49. Well, 49 is a perfect square because you may say, what are the roots of 49? Now here's the deal. If I ask you for the roots, there's going to be 2. What two numbers multiplied together give me 49? Well, because 7 squared and negative 7 squared both give me 49, the square roots are 7 and negative 7. Now this symbol is a square root. It's called the radical sign. It is used to represent a square root. The number underneath the radical sign is called the radicand. So here's how it looks. If I actually tell you to find the square root of 16, that's asking for the positive square root. If I ask for the negative square root, then your answer is going to be negative. If I ask for both, like I did up here, positive or negative square root of 16, you're going to give me plus or minus 4. Which means that negative 4 and 4 are your answers. So in example 2, let's do some well, of course, we're going to do some examples. Example A, if I ask for the square root of 25, if I just ask for the square root of 25, that means all I want is the positive square root. If I ask for the roots of 25, you would give me both positive and negative 5. Now, if I give you the negative, or I want to ask you to find the negative square root of 9/16, that would give me negative 3/4, because 3 times 3 and 4 times 4 gives me 9/16. So my answer would be a negative value. If I asked, what is the plus or minus square root of 2 and 25/100ths? I want the positive and negative value. So your answer would be plus or minus 1.5. Now I could write that out as 1.5 and negative 1.5. Now, squaring a positive number and finding a square root are inverse operations. That's important. Squaring a number and finding a square root are inverse operations. You can use this relationship to evaluate expressions and solve equations involving squares. So if I told you this, we're going to do some examples. Example A. 5 multiplied by the square root of 36 plus 7. Now, we're going to go underneath here, so this is just going to become 5 times 6 plus 7. Easy, that's going to be 30 plus 7, which is 37. Piece of cake. Example B. 1/4 plus the square root of 18 halves. Now, you may ask yourself, well, Mr. Humphreys, I can't take the square root of 18 or 2. That's going to give me a decimal. But simplify it. 18 halves, or 18 divided by 2, is just the square root of 9, which gives me 1/4 plus 3, which gives me 3 1/4. So my answer is 3 1/4. Now here's maybe something that's new to you. If I asked you to find the square root of 81 squared, now, and we're going to do minus 5. The square root of 81 and squared just cancel each other out. You just get 81 minus 5, which would give me an answer of 76. Now, if you don't understand that, I'm going to do it over here in, let's do purple. If I do the square root of 81 squared, the square root of 81 is just 9. And then I have to take 9 squared, which gives me 81. But you can skip this step because the square root and the squared just cancel each other out. Example 4, our last example. In this problem, I want you to find the radius of a crop circle. Now we know the area of a crop circle is 45,216 square feet. That's given to us. We're going to use 3 1400ths as pi, 3.14, and we're going to use the formula for a circle. So step 1. A equals pi r squared is the formula for a circle. You might know that, you might not. But you will learn that this year, and you will learn a lot of area formulas and volume and formulas like that. So since the area is 45,216 square feet, I plug it in for A. So that gives me 45,216 square feet. Pi, I'm plugging it in as 3.14, multiplied by the radius squared. Now, we don't need actually these parentheses. We can just leave it as r squared. Now, you might not know how to solve this equation. We're going to actually learn that after this chapter. But really, as TAP students, you should be able to figure out, okay, I have to undo stuff. So if this is like r squared multiplied by 3.14, to get rid of the multiplication, I can do inverse operations. You heard that earlier in this lesson. So I could divide. The opposite, the inverse of multiplying, is dividing. So I can undo multiplication. Now this is going to give me 3.14 divided by itself. That's gone. I'm left with r squared. Now this gives me 14,400. Now I want to know one thing. I want to know the value of r squared. So you're going to look at this and say, what number to the second power gives me 14,400? Now we learned right before example 3 that the inverse of squaring something was taking the square root. So that's what we're going to do on both sides. Because I want to find r. The whole point of this is to find r, which is the radius. Well, right now, I know the value of r squared. So I take the square root of both sides. So to find the radius, I take the square root of 14,400, which gives me 120. And like any good math student, we have to make sure we label. So what is the radius? The radius is 120 feet.